Okay, welcome. Thanks for being here, and to you on Zoom as well. Appreciate Ariel Zipe, Farmland Preservation Manager for the county. Did I get that right? Here to talk about voluntary agricultural districts. So take it away.
Yes, for Buncombe County. Just Buncombe, yep. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so a lot of my information will be Buncombe specific, but that being said, the programs are coordinated very similarly across other counties. So you would just have to look up the different voluntary ag district coordinator for that county if that's who you were dealing with. So so just a bit of background on me. I came from a farm background. I grew up on a farm in the Piedmont area. I live in Madison County on a farm, work every day with farmers and other landowners. And so, most of my information will be farmland specific, farm or forest land. But we have some other properties in the voluntary ag district too that are not necessarily actively farmed. So that's just a bit of background there. Let's see. Oops. All right. So where this really started was that North Carolina has led the nation in farm loss for a really long time. We have been one of the largest farming states, but we have seen significant loss there. So this program was created to recognize the importance of agriculture, and because of that intense farm loss that we've seen. So through farm loss, you also can see that threatens rural agricultural heritage, loss of income from our ag community, and also loss of fresh food, wildlife habitat, and a lot of other important aspects. So the voluntary ag district, farmland preservation in specifically, is, I guess, what I'm trying to say is my program, Farmland Preservation Program in Buncombe County, is authorized by a general statute, Chapter 106, Article 61. It authorizes counties to manage these programs. So while our program is housed in Buncombe County Soil and Water Conservation District, a lot of other counties, these voluntary ag programs are housed in their cooperative extension agents, extension service, or potentially their planning department. It doesn't always live within soil and water. That's becoming a bit more common, but that might not be where you find that point person in other counties. So specifically for Buncombe County, and truly all other counties that have voluntary ag districts, that county is required to have a farmland preservation ordinance. So that ordinance basically allows the county to facilitate these programs. So the overall purpose is to promote agricultural values, welfare of our rural areas, and to encourage that economic, financial health of these agricultural, horticultural, forestry operations, and to increase that protection from non-farm development. So that's really the purpose of it, that public awareness piece, and to promote that protection. So the actual definition of voluntary ag district is to encourage the voluntary preservation and protection of farmland from non-farm development. This is a recognition of the importance of agriculture to the economic and social well-being of North Carolina. So basically, general awareness, public awareness of these rural productive lands, and making sure that we're publicizing that. So here's a map of North Carolina's voluntary ag districts and enhanced voluntary ag districts. So you can see most counties in North Carolina have one of these. This might be helpful to those folks that are working outside of Buncombe County. The colored in green is voluntary ag districts, and the hashed green is voluntary ag district and enhanced voluntary ag district. So most counties have VAD, and a handful or two handfuls have both programs. So this could be helpful for you to figure out if your county has that. So voluntary ag district eligibility requirements. So say a landowner comes to us and says, we want to join the voluntary ag district. So some of those requirements include the farm has to either be in present use value county tax program, or it has to have an agricultural operation on the farm. So that is determined on the state definition of agriculture, which is pretty broad. So, and if a farm is participating in present use value, they could either be horticulture, agriculture, or forestry. So that's why we have a lot of our forestry parcels in our voluntary ag district. So that's that first eligibility requirement. The second one is that the farm has to be managed in accordance with the USDA's highly erodible lands determination. So this happened back when we were doing a lot of tilling all across the country. And we were determining that we were basically, the USDA was having to determine what lands can be tilled and what lands can't, basically, to reduce erosion. So long story short, I basically send our landowners to the USDA. They have to set up records with the USDA, and then the USDA does this determination on the property so that they're eligible for the program. Once they have those two things, we determine if they are eligible in proximity to other farms in the voluntary ag district. So either the farm itself has to be 50 contiguous acres of farmland, or they have to be at least a mile from 50 contiguous acres in the voluntary ag district. So it sounds kind of complicated, but the point of it is that we're creating regions of farmland. We're not just having farms spotted around the county. We want to encourage regions of these protected lands. So farming is a hard business. It's hard to be successful at it. And so when you are surrounded by communities of other farmers, it makes it it benefits these operations by having community, sharing implements, sharing, knowledge, sharing seeds, those kinds of things. So the like historical reason behind it is really because we're trying to create regions of close farmland. So once we determine that they satisfy that, the landowner signs a 10-year non-binding agreement. So that agreement is pretty simple. It's basically saying they will do no non-farm development on the property. So if they need to build a barn, they can build a barn, but they don't build a house, or they don't subdivide it and sell it to build a house. But it's a non-binding agreement. So say they pass away and their children inherit it, their children can get out of that agreement. They can basically write me a letter and we remove them from the program. So simply they contact us at Soil and Water if they want to join. They sign that agreement. We have a board that governs the program called the Agricultural Advisory Board, and it approves applications every month. And then the landowner enters the program once the board approves it. And for the enhanced voluntary ag district, that's the binding part of this program. And then once that landowner is approved, we actually record a deed at the Register of Deeds, because that is a binding 10-year agreement. So this is what the agreement looks like. It basically says, I agree to sustain, promote, encourage agriculture in the district, I support protection against nuisance suits, undesired non-farm development and other negative impacts on participating farms, and I agree to prohibit non-farm use on the land for a period of 10 years. So they sign that, and we keep that record.
So that's
This is the non-binding, correct. The binding one has a similar conservation agreement, Once the board approves it, then we have an actual deed that our attorney drafts. It's a 3-page deed. You can look them up on the Register of Deeds if you're curious kind of what they look like. Very simple deed, but that is recorded, and it doesn't expire until 10 years.
Choose which one of those two to pursue, or you have to?
No, you can always choose. These are both completely voluntary. So some general farmer benefits of the voluntary ag district. Like I mentioned before, recognition and public education about agriculture. You may or may not have seen, we have these green signs that are out in the communities. We're wanting people to see that and be like, what's that? Let me look into that. I want to learn more about this being an agricultural community. One of the big pieces for our farmers, and maybe where this touches your work as well, is increase from nuisance suit protection. So we have a lot of times where we have a rural community, they've been living there for hundreds of years, and their neighbor sells to a development or to somebody from another place that isn't as familiar with the rural community, and they complain about manure stinks. Your cows are mooing too loudly. Those kinds of things. Or you're plowing your fields at night and the tractor lights are too bright. Those kinds of sights, sounds, smells that are around an ag operation. So if a property is in the voluntary ag district before the other person buys their property adjacent or down the road or whatever, technically that property, the farm property, has protection from those nuisance suits. So this is where it's important for you guys to inform, folks that you are selling properties to about those kinds of things. So public hearings are required for proposed condemnation. So this is, we have seen examples of this where DOT is building a road through a rural community, like out New Leicester Highway, and they want to expand onto a property that's protected in the voluntary ag district. And so if that was proposed, our board would hold a public hearing on that property's behalf. So they also have the ability to have waiver from water and sewer assessments if water and sewer are moving out that way towards their property. And one piece that we find very beneficial is it increases eligibility for funding for other state and federal programs for these farmers, specifically like conservation funding or funding for conservation easements. So it basically boosts up their ranking for that funding. So, and then you also have the Ag Advisory Board is acting as kind of support in those regions and can be seen as a part of the county and county government specifically. All right, so general public benefits of this program. We're preserving North Carolina's #1 industry. Ag is an over $68 billion business in North Carolina. So that's huge. We also have county-wide benefit. It's much cheaper for the county to sustain ag and forest land than residential land. There's no water, there's no sewer, there's no trash pickup. So it does save the taxpayers money to keep undeveloped land like this. Quality of life, we actually have land where we can grow fresh food. We have green spaces, which are seen to help, not only help our natural environment, but also our mental health. We have scenic vistas, which is great for our tourist industry. And then we have the ability to buy locally grown products, especially with Asheville being such a foodie city. That's becoming larger for sure. All right, so now just a bit about the Enhanced Voluntary Ag District. I know I mentioned before that there was that 10-year binding conservation agreement. Eligibility is exactly the same as the VAD program. So The agreement basically needs to be signed, and then we record another signed and notarized deed at the Register of Deeds. So essentially, it is a 10-year term conservation easement on the property. So why would people do it? You would think. Sometimes people are not positive if they want to do a conservation easement on their property, and they want, to try out a shorter term protection. Maybe it's between generations and they want to make sure, they're not quite sure what their next plans are. So they do a shorter term protection than an easement. The other big piece is that we have a lot of conservation cost share programs from our office that help basically fence cattle out of streams, help putting in watering tanks, helping with erosion issues, things like that. And if you're in the enhanced voluntary ag district, you get a 90% cost share as opposed to the 75% cost share that you would typically receive. So it could, if a farmer is planning to do a lot of conservation work on their property, it can save them a lot of money. So some folks just join that for that purpose in itself. This, I just mentioned the 90% cost share, but it also receives higher ranks for some of our grant programs. Landowners may, a perk for some landowners is receiving fewer unsolicited requests to purchase their property. That's something we hear from farmers all the time. They get daily letters from folks trying to buy their property. And like I mentioned, it can be a way to stabilize land while determining if an easement is the right choice. Kind of already mentioned most of these. And so, yeah, this is just generally the public benefit of agriculture. I'm obviously very biased. I think it's a very important part of our life. And as Buncombe County develops and expands and development expands into our rural areas, we are constantly fighting to make sure that folks understand the importance of ag. So that's just kind of a bit of that. So one of the biggest purposes of the voluntary ag district is to increase public awareness of our rural areas. So these are the signs. This is the sign you'll see out in our county. This is our county sign. And so basically, if you see a sign posted, that means that property is protected. Not all properties have the signs. Not all properties, want the signs. But if you see one on a specific property, that usually means that one is in. So this is the way signs and also public maps are the way that we create public awareness and basically make the statement that by being in this program, it's public knowledge that this is a farm or a farming community. So you'll see signs, you'll see actual printed maps at the tax department, Register of Deeds, planning, cooperative extension, and soil and water. And those maps will have parcels highlighted that are in the program. So that's one way you guys can find out if there's if the property is in the program. The other way is we have a layer, voluntary ag district layer on the county GIS page. And we also recently, maybe a year or so ago, created this farm finder map that's listed on our webpage, on pretty much all of those county department web pages. And what that does is you can actually, I'll show it to you in a minute, but you can search a property. It'll pull up the property and it will show you the buffer around that property and the protections that are around that property. So if it's close to a voluntary ag district or if it's in the voluntary ag district. So that's hope. The hope is that can help us avoid conflicts between land use by making that easier. So if you're working in other counties, they don't all look the same. The signs don't all look the same. Sometimes counties get pretty creative. The one that we use and the one on the far the far side with the sun are kind of the more standard ones you'll see around the state, but the wording is pretty similar. So you'll be able to tell that. So like I mentioned, what does it mean for the neighbors? If you're in that region or you're purchasing land in that region, we want to make sure it's very clear that there could be slow moving tractors or vehicles on the road. There could be lights by tractor use, the sounds of animals, sounds of equipment, the smells of animals or equipment, and sometimes moving cows on the road because you need to go from one pasture to another. So, and the other thing that isn't always one of the first things that comes to mind is agriculture or agritourism operations. So that's becoming more common in our county as Asheville is such a wedding destination. And so sometimes our farmers are either converting old barns or building new structures on the property to host weddings or events. We have to remember agriculture is an incredibly hard business to make a living at. And so sometimes these are the ways that these farming operations are being able to actually survive or move to the next generation. So, but agritourism operations would include potentially sounds of weddings, of dancing, of music, or parking on roads or those kinds of things. So that's something to be aware of. So these are the two websites I recommend using to look up a property. I can pull this up and give a little demo just to show you the difference in, let's see. All right, so I'm going to use so say you know the property name or you know the PIN number, you would go in here. I'm sure you guys used this before. So say this is the property I'm looking to purchase or find out more information on. So you go down to your map layers, you scroll to the voluntary ag district layer, check it, and then you'll be able to see there will be two different colors. Most of what you'll see is blue. It'll be the voluntary ag district, but the pink layer is the enhanced voluntary ag district. So that's that permanent 10-year protection. So that's pretty much what you'll see. That's the basic information you can get from the county GIS. And then the farm finder that I mentioned, you'll click that farm finder link. Oh wait, this is not it. Oh yeah, maybe it is. Okay. You'll click your farm finder link. This will come up. So this is specifically for the voluntary ag districts, this entire GIS map. So we'll have this kind of disclaimer. This search will identify if a property is within a half mile of the below properties, either VAD, EVAD, an easement, or a dairy, poultry, or swine operation. We don't have many swine or poultry operations in Buncombe County, and we only have 3 dairies. So you probably aren't going to really see that, but we've mapped them just in case. So if you want to learn more about each of those, these are all linked and they have handouts, telling you a bit more about all of those. But otherwise, you can close the disclaimer and then search. So let's say I'll search the same property. We know it's already an EVAD and there's VAD properties around it. All right. I think as you zoom out, you should be able to see a buffer. Weird. Well, the way it's supposed to work is that the center of it might be that it's on the county line, I'm not sure, but it's supposed to show the property that you searched as the center point. And then it draws a circle, a half-mile circle around that property. So the way the voluntary ag district works is there is a half mile of protection around the property. So that nuisance suit protection and all of those protections we mentioned. So the way this is, I'll have to talk to the GIS department, make sure that this is working well. But the way it should work is that there is a buffer circle with a 1/2 mile radius around the property. And so you would be able to say, hey, you drove down the road, you saw off of Turkey Creek that there was a sign, Voluntary Ag District sign. You can open this up, search that property, see the buffer and be like, oh, well, this property I'm trying to sell, is just outside of that protection. If that's something your client was worried about. So it technically is supposed to be a very helpful resource. And yeah, we'll get it up and working a bit better if, so there's that.
So this could also help you see what other properties could link up, like get 10 acres,
Mm-hmm.
link up to other.
Exactly. Yeah, this is kind of what we use for determining eligibility of those 50-acre sections. And that is, while the protection buffer is a 1/2 mile, the eligibility distance is 1 mile. So it allows a bit more flexibility there. So like I mentioned, this is all very Buncombe specific because I work for the county, but I deal with a lot of our other counties around the area. And basically, if you're looking to contact me in other counties, this is the link to do it. This is our state website. And basically, you would click this link. It would take you to the State Voluntary Ag District page, which would have a lot more specific information too if you're looking for it. And then, let's see, county info. And then here you have all the counties and you would click, whatever county you're looking for. So you're looking in Haywood, click Haywood, and you would see Ryan Manning is your point person in Haywood. And it even sends you straight to that VAD site that county has. So that's helpful there. So right now, just a kind of a snapshot in time. Right now we have 301 farms in the Voluntary Ag District, and that totals 21,395.9 acres. So that's a chunk of land in the county. The more, binding EVAD program, we just have 20 farms, a little over 2,000 acres. So that kind of gives you an idea for those totals in the county.
So most of those around Sandy, I know Sandy Mush has.
Yep. So this is the map right here showing you all of, perfect segue for me. All the purple properties are the Voluntary Ag District, and all the pink ones are enhanced. So it is scattered around the county, but yes, you're right. Our main focus areas for conservation are up in that Northwest Buncombe area, Leicester, Sandy Mush, Barnardsville, that kind of area, and then out towards Fairview, Fletcher. So that's really where the properties are. It is. Yeah, exactly. So basically that county GIS map, if you zoomed all the way out, you would see this, but this specifically is the map that we have posted at our office, at the tax office, register of deeds, all of that. So, if you knew kind of what your parcel shape was, you'd be able to tell. So that's kind of the gist of the Voluntary Ag District. Just a few items to note that are happening right now in the county. Back in 2020, Buncombe County passed a strategic plan. And one of the big goals of the strategic plan was to protect farm, forest land, and environmentally sensitive tracts. So the county has a big emphasis on that. So that's just one piece of a goal that the county created. The other thing that's going on right now is our 2043 comprehensive land use plan. I don't know how much everyone's heard about that. That's all happening through the planning department. But we have been a big voice at the table to just plan the future of Buncombe County. How do we want the county to look? It's a public, it's a public plan. So anybody who wants to give their public input is welcome. But we want to make sure that we plan the future of the county so that it doesn't all look like South Asheville. We want to make sure that, Buncombe County, South Asheville's great. no beef about South Asheville, but the reason people come to Buncombe County and to Asheville is not for that. We want our unique places still, and we want to make sure that we can really plan the future of the county. So through that, we have been doing a lot of work on planning our priority conservation regions. And like you saw with this map, we have two conservation boards with Buncombe County. One is the Agricultural Advisory Board, like I mentioned, and then we have another one called the Land Conservation Advisory Board. And so the Ag Advisory Board governs my program. The Land Conservation Advisory Board works with our local land trusts, our nonprofit agencies holding easements and working on land conservation. So we've been working with both boards to really hone in and create focus areas for conservation. And conservation can mean voluntary ag district, but mostly it's meaning conservation easements, the permanent protection of our land. So, and right now, those regions are really they're really the four corners. They're, as you get closer out to the edge, we have our, Fletcher, Fairview, a little bit up into Broad River area. And then the really deep areas of Candler, Hominy Valley, Lester, Sandy Mush, and then Barnardsville, Ivy, Jupiter area. So that's where we're right now focusing kind of those efforts. And what we found with all of our research is the more you can have more impact in protected lands, the closer you get them together. So, more contiguous adjacent protection has more environmental benefit, more wildlife value, and like I mentioned, more community value for some of our farmers. So that's the other piece. And then from that, the commissioners, I believe it was back in May, set a goal to reach, to protect 20% of Buncombe County by 2030. So right now we're at 18%. We have about 0.5% in the works. And so we still need 1.5%. Yeah.
What's the intersection between your office and open space?
Right. That's okay. So I'm a county employee. I can't really take any stand on the bond. I can let you know that the open space bond is seen as being divided into three sections. One is land conservation, which is my focus. One is open space, which would be used for passive recreation. And the other is for greenways. So there is connection there. And it would be for funding conservation easement projects in the county. Yeah. So right now, the county has obviously set a lot of goals and a lot of emphasis on conservation and has shown budget support for that as well over the last few years. So we've been able to increase the work that we have been doing. When I started about 7 years ago, we were able to do 2 projects a year. And this year we've already started 16. So it's helpful. Yeah, it's a big deal. So the other last piece I'll say, and any questions you have, is one. So there's a kind of a big, it feels like a big transition in the farm community where, a lot of our farmers are aging out and they're figuring out how to leave the land to the next generation. And sometimes that's where we come in. They're worried about what the next generation will do, if they'll sell it or divide it or whatever. And so we come in and sometimes, we can help them protect it. But the other big piece is say they don't protect it and they end up leaving it to the next generation sells it. And maybe that's where you guys come in and you're facilitating someone else to buy it. And maybe that person that you help purchase the property is interested in continuing to farm the property or to lease it to somebody. There's a fantastic resource called North Carolina Farm Link. And my main concern is, my focus is protecting land, but we can protect land all day. We don't have people that are wanting to farm the land. What use is that if, for our food shed? But so the reason North Carolina Farm Link is helpful is that it connects farm owners or landowners and farm seekers. So say you have a landowner that has a lot of land and they want to keep it, managed, but they just don't have the time, or they're older and they can't manage it themselves. This website is kind of like a dating site to connect owners and new farmers or folks that have farmed for a long time, but just need property. As property gets more expensive, our farmers are having a hard time affording it, especially if you're newly starting out your farm operation. So it's a fantastic resource to make that connection. If you come upon somebody that's wanting to find somebody to farm. So that's kind of.
Did we get a contact for a reason?
Yes. Stephen Bishop, I believe, is his name. I have his contact information, so I can write it down for you guys. I don't have a card or a handout for him, but.
I knew they hadn't filled it right away.
Yeah. They filled it a few months back. So, yeah. You guys have any questions? You're always welcome to reach out if you have questions. And also, I don't know how the real estate world works, but if there are folks that focus on selling farmland more than others, that's always great for us to know because we have people asking. So,
area is that was a lot more over in that area? Is that because I know there's several families that have been there a long time. Cherry Wells is promoted on this. Is that why we're seeing more over in that area to be part of this program? Because Fairview has a lot of too.
Yeah, that's a good question. I would say most of our ag is out that way.
Okay.
And so it's just a lot of ag lands and lands that have been in families for a long time. And people that are just really adamant about not having land split up or developed. It's like there's just this, really intense, I don't know, powerful feeling that everyone wants to make sure that it's protected. I think most folks would be happy if the entire, Sandy Mush itself was protected. So I think it's just a passion in that community.
It also the land trust goals.
Yes.
Water protection. Sandy Mush is like the top right where it is.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of overlap with it.
Yeah. And what we find is that once you get your foot in a community, you start protecting, a couple parcels, the best way to spread that conservation word is through a trusted voice. So they trust their neighbors that went through that process way more than some random lady with a weird last name. Like they're definitely, they're very much more into listening and, I don't know, entertaining new ideas from their trusted neighbors. So that's my best guess. This is one of our protected farms out in Sandy Mush there. Yeah.
So that protection has to have 50 acres.
You do not. So if you are a sole island and you're not close to any other properties in that program, you do have to have 50 acres. If you are close, at least a mile from some other properties in in that program, then you don't have to have 50 acres. It just has to be 50 acres within a mile. The other thing I didn't really talk about, but we do conservation. We have a conservation easement program as well, very similar to what a land trust does. And that's starting to pop up all around North Carolina. Soil and water districts are starting to hold conservation easements. And I think while a lot of folks might think that's just the land trust world, we have a lot of folks that have worked with soil and water districts since, the Dust Bowl. I mean, for a very long time, and it's like that trusted voice. There's folks that would protect their lands with districts that wouldn't go for a land trust route. So we do have a kind of a niche market there. So that's another way we protect it. That's actually my main focus with my job. Yeah. Well, if you guys don't have any other questions, you're welcome to reach out to me. I have a handout here, specifically like a one-pager about the voluntary ag district. Another thing I just realized I didn't mention, say you're a landowner and you buy a property and you put the voluntary, you join the voluntary ag district. Then 10 years down the road, you say, well, I really want to build my daughter a house. You just remove yourself from the program, build the house, and then you can join again. So it's really, it's simple. Yeah. You just can't be in the program while you're doing a development of the property. So, but then they can rejoin. Yeah. So, all righty. Well, thank you.